You're a guy making 50, 70,000 a year. You don't care about debt to GDP. You don't care about, are we at 2.6% versus 3% growth? All you care about is how much money do I have at the end of the month? Do I have enough money to maybe go on a vacation or save a little for my kids' college? Can I fill my grocery cart, for goodness sake? Can I fill my car up? I know, 5% of America might use the EV and they think that they're plugging their car into a tree or something to get the free energy that's not free because you need natural gas or something real that's going to fuel it. But most Americans just want to know, how's my life going to be better or worse from a bill? This bill, your life will be dramatically better because you're going to have more money in your pocket. Your small business that you're working for or large business is going to now invest more money into the economy to allow you to get a higher paying job, to grow more jobs so they can hire more people.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Today's episode is going to be a little different. Americans for Prosperity held one of its congressional conversations with Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Fox News contributor and AFP Advisory Council member Guy Benson. In this conversation, the Majority Leader dives into the reconciliation bill, and I want to note that this was recorded before it passed the House and moved on to the Senate. The reason we want to bring you this conversation is because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is part of the bill. And if those tax cuts aren't extended, it could mean higher taxes and less money in your pocket. The Majority Leader also does a great job breaking down what the bill is all about and even shares some behind-the-scenes insight into what was happening at the time. So here's a conversation between Guy Benson and Majority Leader Steve Scalise.
Pretty big day. Great to be here at the AFP Freedom Embassy in Washington, D.C. with the House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. It's so good to see you again.
Guy, it's great to be with you.
And it was a very quiet week for you.
Not much going on, nothing different,
It's not just a crazy day, it's a crazy hour or two. I'm seeing what's going on the Hill, so let's get right to it. Before we talk about the task at hand and moving forward, we had Speaker Johnson here a couple months ago talking about all the naysayers, a lot of doubters in the press corps and in this town, and expectations have been defied already a few times during this journey. Talk about what you guys have pulled off to get here.
Yeah, it's almost like you use bulletin board material in sports, and boy, if the opposing team says something, you put it up on the wall. Like if I just kept a file of all the obituaries of this bill that the press has written, it's been dead 10 times till Sunday, and they're still, like today, gee whiz, there's no way they're going to get there. They don't have the votes. And, you go look at the first vote on the budget. It's a two-step process, of course, reconciliation. You need the budget, then reconciliation. We were short. We had to barely get there. We didn't even have a vote to spare to pass the budget. I'm going on the floor, and, we knew it was going to be tight. We knew there were a couple of people that were not quite there, that we thought we were going to get there, but they're never going to give you an answer until you got to put that voting card in the machine, and everybody's watching. And we felt confident they were going to get there, but they wouldn't give us that final answer. And the press said, what happens if the bill fails? And I just looked and I said, failure's not an option. Walked in and knew we weren't yet there, but I felt we were going to get there because of what is at stake in this bill. Same thing with the second vote on the budget. Comes back from the Senate. Senate kind of underwhelms us in what they did. We took a lot of action on the House side to get very aggressive at pushing the envelope on all the committees, 11 committees involved in this bill. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, for perspective, only 2 committees were involved. In great historic legislation, by the way, TCJA was revolutionary. This bill is even more revolutionary. 11 committees involved, all had big targets, aggressive targets to hit. Every committee exceeded their numbers. Energy and commerce. Oh, there's no way. Look at all the press stories. There's no way energy and commerce is going to hit $880 billion. That was a big number. And you had senators, there's no way I'll vote for that bill. House members, no way I'll vote for that. Guess what? Now that we were moving up the date on the work requirements, which is going to generate even more savings in the waste, fraud, and abuse section of Medicaid to make that program work better, Energy and Commerce could achieve over $1 trillion just out of that one committee when they said $880 billion couldn't be done. So we've got to first believe in ourselves and our members and our colleagues. A lot of very vicious fights on both sides. You know, we don't have any Democrats doing this, by the way. So it's just us on the Republican side with our moderate members, our ultra-conservative members, everybody that's got different ideas. We either all come together, it doesn't happen. And so while the press was writing it off, we knew it's on us to do this. Nobody else is going to make this happen. If we want to save this great country, we all run saying we want to do this. We all want to get into mandatory spending. We know discretionary, you can only go so far. You want to get to balanced budgets, solve the fiscal crisis, all the things we talk about. You have to do it by going into mandatory spending. And here we have a bill now on the verge. Tomorrow, hopefully, we get it passed. $1.5 trillion plus. New scoring's coming out. I think it could be up to $1.7 trillion at least in savings for the American taxpayer in mandatory spending. That, by the way, is a record. Never in the history of America has Congress saved that much money in mandatory spending by the way, by a multiple of 2. You can adjust for inflation. It's, well, adjusted for inflation, $800 billion might be the record. We're more than double that in what we're achieving. So these are historic things that are about to be done, and let's go get it done. We have to get it done.
So this morning, speaking of the press, there were all sorts of reports and quotes out there circulating about things that were said to the conference, to the caucus from the president. President showed up for a bit of a pep rally, a little bit of a pep talk, perhaps. You made the football reference before. You, of course, were in the room. What did the president have to say? What was his message?
Yeah, so it was a packed house, you know, and as you can imagine, when President Trump comes, I mean, look, President Trump's the leader of our party, but our members love President Trump and love the agenda he ran on. I mean, this bill encompasses as much of the agenda that Trump and us ran on in this last election where we got a mandate. We've talked about that too, by the way. You know, 77 million voters said we want Donald Trump to be president. All 7 swing states, he ran the table. And he ran saying, what did he say at every stop? We're going to secure the border. We're going to prevent a tax increase on every American family. We're going to produce more energy, drill, baby, drill, all of those things. All of that is in this bill. Kamala, by the way, said, we want the Trump tax cuts to expire. She ran on that. She said she wants to keep an open border. She didn't want to fund the border security measures that are in this bill. She sure didn't want to do what Trump's doing on American energy. She wants to shut down American energy like Joe Biden did. Green New Deal subsidies, they'd all be in place if Kamala was president. All that's gone in this bill. And so the contrast in the election is now being proven out in this bill. And so what President Trump talked about is, look, these are all the things we ran on, that we said we would do. Now's the time to do it. The time for debating, for negotiating is over. You know, and Trump this morning, I mean, at 8:30 he's there, the place is packed. We've got members in the room that are still trying to negotiate. They're trying to say, hey, let's not vote this week. Let's just push it off another week, which, by the way, I have heard that for about 3 months now. You know, they've wanted to push this off and push it off. We'd be voting next February if some people got their way, and we'd never get there. And the economy would never recover. The families who are waiting on this bill, which, by the way, most Americans want the relief in this bill, you don't get it until it's signed by Donald Trump. So what President Trump said this morning, that I thought was the most important message is all these issues, SALT, Medicaid, all the open-ended things that we can negotiate for months and months and not make any room on because we've already been negotiating them. It's time to make the deal. It's time to close the deal and vote. Let's vote on this bill.
Yeah, I do want to talk about some of those tensions within the conference and some of the holdouts. But before we do that, you just kind of glancingly mentioned a lot of things that are in this bill. Of course, we've talked a lot about the tax side of it. It's the biggest thing. The massive tax hike that is about to slam this economy across every income group, businesses big and small, if you guys don't act at the end of the year, right? That is number one. But there are some additional elements of tax relief in this bill, and there's energy, and there's border, right? Those are sometimes not discussed as much in the press, but those are really big components here, right?
Massive components. And so, I like to point out, because if you listen to the rhetoric to the left, by the way, it's the same exact things that they lied about, and these are lies, flat out lies, that they lied about in 2017. Tax cuts for the rich. How many times have you heard that? And yet you can go look at the numbers. Biden's data you can use anybody's data, it's out there. Which groups benefited? Every income group benefited. Okay, let's be clear. Poor, middle class income, medium income, and rich people, every income group benefited. The groups that benefited the most from TCJA were the lower and middle income groups. All the data, you strata it any way you want, proves that, because we were losing our middle class in America at a 35% corporate rate. World average was 23. We were not competitive as a nation, losing great companies every month. Great American companies leaving America. Oh, we're number one. Nobody's going to leave America, except they were all the time. And they weren't just moving the headquarters, they were taking jobs with them. Millions of jobs gone. The company's gone. And so we needed to rebuild our middle class. It wasn't existing. And so when we brought those tax rates down, all the scorekeepers up here, the Democrats too, oh, gee whiz, it's going to blow a hole in the deficit because you're cutting taxes. Yeah, go look at all the deficit gains that they made in revenue in New York and California, where they raised taxes on the millionaires and billionaires. Guess what happened? The millionaires and the billionaires left. They're not paying the tax. It doesn't generate money. AFP knows this better than anybody. You pound people with taxes and punish them for success, they just become less successful, or they just leave. And businesses were leaving America. So stop the lies about tax cuts for the rich. There is no tax cut for the rich, by the way, in this bill. We sustain the current levels. Nobody sees a tax increase. Everybody in America, 90+% of Americans would see a tax increase, on average 22% increase. Your lower and middle income families, forget about the rich. They're going to figure their way out. They can hire teams of lawyers and accountants. You know who can't do that? Lower and middle income families. They would see a 22% tax increase. The alternative minimum tax, something many people don't even know right now. They might have to Google it, because we repealed it. It comes back fully if this bill doesn't pass. That, by the way, is a gut punch to the middle class. You look at no tax on tips, new provision for President Trump. As I tell people, I love beating up on Elon Musk. Elon Musk doesn't work for tips, the last time I checked. He will not benefit from that. Who does? The average income of a tip worker is less than $70,000 or $60,000. These are hardworking people in the middle and lower income classes who will benefit dramatically from that change. No tax on overtime. A lot of blue-collar workers that sometimes will turn down work to work overtime because they just don't make enough difference in what they work overtime with the higher taxes. And so not taxing that, I think you're going to get higher productivity.
That's on the income tax side, right?
On the income tax side. And so, you look at those things. Then you look at, by the way, you want to juice this economy? Locking in current rates, including 199A. A lot of people in America might not know what it means. If you're a small business owner in America, you know exactly what that means, because the 199A provision, that expires at the end of this year if we don't take action. We lock it in permanently in this bill. That allows small businesses to compete on a level playing field with global companies. Corporations are set at 21%. That's permanent. It's not permanent? The relief to small businesses. You would crush small businesses and create a disparity of a 21% rate for the big global corporation and up to a 43% rate for a small business in America. Think of what that would do to them. We lock in that lower rate for small businesses permanently. Then we bring back immediate expensing and bonus depreciation. You want to talk about economic growth? How do you get to a balanced budget? The Democrats would say raise taxes on everybody. And by the way, the social experiment that they've done in every left-leaning blue state has failed, because raising taxes doesn't do that. It leads to higher deficits, because it's the spending you've got to get control of. But you can't just control spending and get there. You also need to grow the economy. Economic growth and controlled spending is what gets you to balanced budgets. This bill does both. It deals with controlling spending, but it really gets you juiced economic growth by locking in permanently tax rates, and bringing back some of these other things like immediate expensing, bonus depreciation, that will encourage more investment in American workers, American jobs, higher wages, which will mean lower costs at the grocery store, lower costs at the gas pump. We have energy production in this bill to lower costs, lower interest rates, all the things that matter to families that President Trump and all of us campaigned on in this bill.
So energy independence, border security as well. There's a lot of priorities that almost all of you guys campaigned on, right?
All
So
of us.
nevertheless, there are still some holdouts, and I'm not interested in demonizing them. I think you aren't either, but it's crunch time. You've got the fiscal conservatives, a handful of them, saying this doesn't go far enough, and I've heard some of their arguments. I talked to one of them on the air the other day. Pretty reasonable point Chip Roy was making, in my opinion. I know he's trying to get to yes. He seems constructive. Then you've got some folks who are in districts in blue states, high-tax blue states, and they're looking out for their constituents. I happen to think they're wrong, but they're looking out for their constituents on the SALT thing and rejecting some of the deals that have been on the table that seem awfully generous to maybe too generous, actually, as far as I'm concerned. I heard that the president came in and said, enough of this, take the deal or forget about it. What is the message and what is the way that you take these two groups that seem pretty disparate and find a way to get them all to yes? You were a whip counter for a long time. It's threading a needle and the time is now. So sort of give us the vision of how that actually works.
Yeah, and that whip side of me, I was majority and minority whip, and you learn how to count votes, but really what you learn to do is understand where all the members are coming from. Because look, put me in the category of the folks that want to go further in some of the things we're doing on Medicaid and some other areas, but the votes aren't there. And by the way, this isn't like, oh, we'll just push those guys. They'll just come along. I've been in rooms with them. They would gladly vote no on some of those kind of reforms. And so how far can we go and get the savings on things like work requirements, which are significant, never been done before in Medicaid. Look at what we're doing in SNAP on the food stamp program. Same thing, very aggressive work requirements to lock that in. Some of this was done under Bill Clinton, and then over time, from Obama to Biden, they watered it all down to where there's no work requirements. You literally have 35-year-old able-bodied adults sitting in their mom's basement playing video games, getting about $40,000, $50,000 in taxpayer benefits. Mom doesn't want them in the basement anyway. You sure don't want to be paying them to sit there and do nothing. Well, you've got disabled people who are truly needy, barely getting by on Medicaid, and you've got the guy in his mom's basement getting more from Medicaid. How about we fix that disparity? But what we're trying to say is, let's actually get people back to work who are able to work. And it's America. You don't have to work if you don't want, but it's also America, and you don't have to force me to pay you not to work. And that's the big difference that we're going to fix with this. And that will get more people into the workforce, which is good for them, by the way. Because if you're able to work and you're just sitting at home, it can become a vicious cycle. And then you get trapped on all of these welfare programs, and then you lose hope, you lose opportunity. And if you have that taken away where you actually have to go back to work, they will go back into the workforce and they'll have opportunity again, be able to rent an apartment, move out of mom's house. They'll actually feel good about their lives for a change, but it's hard to get there. And so we've got to push our members on both sides as far as they can go. And what President Trump was talking about today as it relates to SALT and as it relates to Medicaid is we have pushed both sides very far. Great arguments. I was on a call with Chip on Saturday for over an hour. I agree with all the points he said, but I said, I can name you 20 members right now who just aren't there. If you can get those 20 members, and by the way, Chip and I have both been in meetings with those members multiple times on these issues, and they're not budging. They're just not. And so we can yell at each other all day long, or we can say, if we don't come together, none of this happens. And America just goes into a death spiral. And you can say, hey, America went into the abyss, but I voted no. Don't worry. Phil Graham used to say that. Oh, I am not going to be that guy that sits on my porch when I retire from Congress and go, yeah, when I was there, America just all went to hell in a handbasket, but I voted no. You didn't come up here to vote no and let America crash and burn. If you had the opportunity to get the best deal you can and then vote yes to save this great country, that's what we came here to do. Make your best deal and then vote yes.
Voting no will be every Democrat, right? I don't think that there's any Democrat.
Do you really want to be in the same category on this bill? Raising taxes, saying no to American energy, opening up the border, letting the criminal gang members who came to this country illegally stay in America. The no vote gets you that, and I can tell you who is voting no. AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Tlaib, Omar, Crockett. You want me to continue going on? Do you want to be in that list? Because that's the list you're going to be in if you vote no. 95% of our members are already there. A few more are saying, let's try to see if we can get a few more things. More power to them. But what Trump said today is, time for the negotiation is over.
Yeah,
we got to vote. You got your best deal. Take yes for an answer. Declare victory. Now let's go lock in these wins.
Opponents of the bill are going to point to a couple things. They're going to talk about deficits. They're suddenly concerned about deficits and debt, but they'll talk about that. And overall, of course, that is a pressing and urgent concern for the country. The other thing that they'll say is Medicaid. Look at the CBO scores. They're going to take all these needy, indigent people and rip their health care away from them. Those are the two big talking points. You've hinted at a couple of the responses to those. But I think it's important, A, to reiterate what you said. Virtually every negative prediction made by the left about the last version of this in 2017 was proven wrong by reality, right? They cut taxes, you cut taxes, and revenues went up, right? This parade of horribles, it's Armageddon, it's Frankenstein. Crumbs is what Pelosi called the tax cuts. A lot of Americans then woke up and said, actually, I like these crumbs a lot. A couple $1,000s is not crumbs to us, maybe to her. So yes, you can use their past inaccuracies and dishonesty as a counterpoint. But here we are again. They're making the case. Here's what CBO score says. How do you reassure Americans that this is fiscally prudent to do and is not going to be mean-spirited on the Medicaid front?
Yeah, and there are two very important points because that is the talking point of the left. They're, same playbook. They've always gone with it. They haven't even learned that they lost the election last year. I don't know, someone might not even know they lost. But these are the same people, remember, that were telling you that Joe Biden was just fine, never sharper in his life than right before the debate, and then they were like, oh, gee whiz, I don't know what happened. Maybe he had a bad night. And then it all came out that they all knew, we all knew, that this had been a decline going on for a long time. They were just trying to hide it and cover up, and they lied to the American people. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last time. But let's take this point on, oh, gee whiz, disabled people. And so they started running ads over 2 months ago. And let's take our two most vulnerable members that they were just pummeling with false ads. David Valadao in California, Don Bacon in Nebraska. They were running these ads before the bill was even filed. So, they're going to take away Medicaid for disabled people, and pregnant women are going to be thrown out on the streets and all this. Guess what? The ad was so false, we got the ads pulled down. You know how hard it is to get an ad pulled down. We got them pulled down because they were lying. So let's keep that in mind. And they're still telling the same lie. The difference is, if you look at the bill now, we actually have text. This bill will strengthen Medicaid for the actual needy. Why is Medicaid there? Somebody runs into hard times. We all are compassionate people. We want to help them out and get through the hard times. Not be there for your whole life and turn down work, but to get through the hard times. If you're disabled, and there's horror stories, we're going to take care of those folks. But the program becomes less able to take care of those people.
Which is the
when
point
you
of the
add
program.
millions more people who shouldn't be on it, taking away those benefits. Doctors won't even see some of those people because the reimbursement is so low, because the program is so broken. And so if you fix it for the truly disabled by saying, if you're able to work, you got to go get a job. Sorry, that's the way it's going to be. It will show you, CBO will score it and say, millions of people, 8 million people will be kicked off of Medicaid. Well, who are they? A lot of them are people here illegally. They're not supposed to. They're going to say, oh, gee whiz, they're not supposed to be on Medicaid. But they are. So guess what? Belt and suspenders. We remove them. So yeah, we're kicking people off called illegals who aren't supposed to be here in the first place. And then we go into waste, fraud, and abuse. And the guy that's turning down work, who's fully capable of working, he's supposed to be doing that anyway. He's not supposed to be on a program like Medicaid. We just make sure he gets to go. And by the way, when he gets a job, he won't be on Medicaid. Yeah, so they'll count him in that number. What they're not showing you is he got a job and he's got better health care now because he's getting a job through his employer. Did we forget? Employer care used to be the primary place where people got health care before Obamacare tried to squeeze everybody into a single payer, failed government-run program.
A genuine question, because I like to sort of think honestly about how the other side feels and what their policy views are. What is the argument against taking illegal immigrants off of Medicaid and requiring able-bodied, work-eligible adults to at least be actively seeking jobs in order for us to pay for their health care? Like,
if you
what is
want
the
to
argument
get that
against?
answer, Guy, you need to go to El Salvador, to the prison where the wife-beating gang member who came to this country illegally is been sent back to, and Democrats are flying to El Salvador to try to get that guy out of prison and back into America to beat up more women here. That's what they want. That's the Democrat Party of today. It's why they're a rudderless ship. You know, the press goes, oh, they don't have a leader. I say, absolutely they have a leader. Their leader is AOC. It's Bernie Sanders. It's Crockett. You know, Chris Van Hollen wants to be the leader. Going to El Salvador to try to get a gang member, wife beater out of prison and back into this country? Do we really want in America, by the way, I've seen polling on this, it ain't good for Van Hollen or his friends on the Democrat side. American citizens don't want violent, illegal gang members who commit crimes against our citizens let back into this country. They're glad Trump is sending them back home, but he's running out of money to do it. They don't want him to have the money, by the way, to do it. This bill gives Trump the money not only to build the wall, to give drone technology, night vision goggles to our Border Patrol agents who have been pleading with us for years to say, give us the technology that the drug cartels have. It's embarrassing when our own Border Patrol agents don't have anywhere near the technology that a drug cartel member has in Mexico, so they can't even protect the border properly. We give them those tools in this bill. We allow for the hiring of more Border Patrol agents. All of those things are in this bill, but the Democrats are over in El Salvador trying to release gang members back into America. They're not going to get their way, by the way. But I'm for sending them all over there, maybe on one-way tickets.
Yeah, maybe they'll make Kilmar Abrego Garcia the Medicaid administrator or something
He's their
like
poster
that.
child.
So I want to reset here. We're at AFP, Americans for Prosperity, and the Freedom Embassy. We've got the House Majority Leader here with us, Steve Scalise of Louisiana, and one of your constituents is actually with us and has a question.
I see Scott Simon over. I served with him in the state legislature, and he's now leading and doing a great job of leading Louisiana's chapter. So it's great to see you, Scott.
And another one of your friends right here is Caleb, who's got a question for you. So
Caleb,
take it
you
away.
get the question. How about that?
Hey, I'm Caleb
Is that a
Franklin.
Mardi Gras bead you
yes,
got on?
Yes, it is. It's
Look at
Louisiana
this.
branded. You would take one home
Go
with
Tigers.
you.
I mean, look at
Absolutely,
this.
Go Tigers. So I do grassroots engagement work in your district back home. And as you know, AFP has millions of volunteers across this country. In Louisiana alone, we've hosted dozens of town halls, knocked thousands of doors. We're even doing podcasts with business leaders in our community. My question for you is, what message you have for our activists back home and across the country to keep them fired up and engaged to make sure we can get this bill passed and get it in front of the president for him to sign?
Yeah, well, let me first thank y'all for what you're doing on a grassroots level, because that matters. You know, the only side you're going to hear from the press is the negative side. I mean, even in my own hometown newspaper, they wrote an article on all the lies about Medicaid. They never even called me. I'm the majority leader of the House. I may know a thing or two about the bill. I knew everything they were saying was a lie. And they interviewed more disabled people, and oh, gee whiz, they might lose their, and I'm like, they're not losing a thing. Nobody's got any of them on the chopping block. You know, we do have on the chopping block, and I never saw any of them in the articles, by the way. The fully able-bodied 35-year-old who's playing video games in his mom's basement. Why didn't they interview that guy and go, gee whiz, he might lose this Medicaid program because he's going to have to go get a job? They didn't interview him because he's not a compelling story. And I would have told him, yes, we are going to make that guy go get work. And most Americans, by the way, want him to go get work, but they sure don't want to pay him $30,000, $40,000 in taxpayer benefits to sit at home and do nothing when he's capable. So letting people know what's in this bill, because all you've been hearing, if you're just reading the media, you know, and any Democrat that says tax cuts for the rich, they'll write the story. I've told the press multiple times. Have you ever questioned them on that? Because you know it's a lie, by the way. Show me a tax. Here's the bill. Got you the bill. It's about 1,000 pages. Show me in the tax code section of this bill where we give a tax cut to anybody in the rich, Elon Musk, any of them. It's not in the bill. But they'll write the story saying it is because a Democrat said it. So when we tell the truth about this bill, people love it. When they hear, number one, it prevents your taxes from going up, it protects small businesses so they can hire more people. It's going to allow for wage growth for families. It's going to allow us to produce more energy, where Trump's done as much as he can there on executive orders. He's done great stuff. But this opens up everything from Anwar in Alaska to more lease sales in the Gulf of America. Yes, I just said it. You know, we do border security, which again, this was a major issue in the campaign, and the American people still want to lock it in. They love that Trump's doing great stuff on border security, but you're seeing a lot of it's getting fought out in the courts still. He's running out of money to do the deportations. They need more resources for our Border Patrol agents, and it's supported by the American people. It's in the bill. A number of other really important things that people are never going to find out if they're just reading a local newspaper. So what y'all are doing at the grassroots level is critical, because I think America, the more they hear about this bill, is going to love it. They're just not going to hear any of these things that we've been talking about today.
And people can, all across the country, I actually was just in California at an event with AFP, and I was talking specifically about the tax increases that would slam virtually every American if this doesn't get done. And I was wondering, I wonder what the average tax increase would be in California specifically. Ahead of that event, I went to prosperityispossible.com. They've got all 50 states built out.
Nice.
And the number in California is like $3,600 in California. It's crazy. So we know what the negative impact would be if this doesn't get done. You just ran through it. Let's flip it in a more positive way. A year from now, if you do get it done, and it gets through the Senate, that's a whole separate question. We can get through and up here at some point. And the president signs it. A year from now, as you're heading toward the midterm elections, what are the American people feeling in terms of achievements, things that can impact their lives for the better? What does that look like?
Yeah, so again, we went through this in 2017, and I use TCJA as kind of a benchmark, because this is locking in those tax cuts. This isn't new stuff we're talking about. You know, tax on tips, overtime, that's new. The individual rates, the alternative minimum tax, death tax doubles, by the way, if this bill doesn't pass. Those kind of things that will have an impact mostly on small businesses, not large. You know, corporations keep their 21%. And I'm glad. I don't want anybody to face a tax increase. But there are people that would if this bill doesn't pass. And it's important that we know what happens to the economy a year from now, Guy. As you say, I saw the economic growth that we had that was off the charts. More growth, higher wages for those workers. You know, you're a guy making $50,000, $70,000 a year. You don't care about debt to GDP. You don't care about, are we at 2.6% versus 3% growth? All you care about is how much money do I have at the end of the month? Do I have enough money to maybe go on a vacation or save a little for my kids' college? Can I fill my grocery cart, for goodness sake? You know, can I fill my car up? I know, 5% of America might use the EV, and they think that they're plugging their car into a tree or something to get the free energy that's not free, because you need natural gas or something real that's going to fuel it. But most Americans just want to know, how's my life going to be better or worse from a bill? This bill, your life will be dramatically better, because you're going to have more money in your pocket. Your small business that you're working for, or large business, is going to now invest more money into the economy to allow you to get a higher paying job, to grow more jobs so they can hire more people, including the 35-year-old that we're kicking off the couch. We're not just leaving him out to be thrown out with the trash. He's going to actually have companies that want to hire him. And he's going to, probably his mom's going to tell him, get out the basement, go get a job. There will be a job waiting for him. And he's going to realize what it's like to be able to make $50,000 or $60,000, not just getting freebies from the government at scraps, but to be able to fend for yourself and improve your own livelihood. Then that means all the other things that grow in the economy. I've heard numbers like $4 trillion is sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what we do with this bill. Because you're talking about the whole tax code of America that literally is up for grabs. We don't know what it's going to look like until we get this bill or not. This bill doesn't pass, massive tax hikes, $4.5 trillion worth. If this bill passes, you lock in permanently the tax code, so now you'll see investment get made. We estimated a 2.6% economic growth factor. I think it'll be much higher than that. I was actually just talking to Trump's team about what we really think it'll be. We think it'll be over 3% economic growth, which is trillions of dollars more coming into the Treasury. By the way, that reduces the deficit in America. That lowers interest rates, which is great for a family trying to buy a house, But it's also great for America that right now we're paying more for our borrowing costs than we pay to fund our Department of Defense because interest rates are so high. We lower those interest rates, it helps everybody, and it lowers our deficit. All of this matters.
All right, we're up on time. Very quickly, prediction. Does this get passed, and does it get passed this week?
It's got to get done. Failure is not an option. We are always on a tight margin right now in the House. We've got to get it done. We're not going to stop until we get it done. But look, President Trump is ready for this bill to keep moving to the next step. Let's get it over to the Senate. Let them start. I don't want those guys to sit around like the Maytag repairman. I want the senators to get to work. They're going to. We've been talking to them along the way. We need to get it done in the House, and we will.
House Majority Leader Steve Scalise of Louisiana here at AFP Freedom Headquarters, the embassy here. Please join me in thanking the Majority Leader. It's good to see you.
Always good to be with you.
Hopefully the Senate will pass the bill and stop a massive tax increase from happening to Americans who can't afford it. If you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.